afternoon and welcome back to the Guyana Extractives Industry Transparency Week. Today is the second day of our week-long activities, and this afternoon we have another interesting panel for you, dear audience. The topic is working career opportunities in the extractive sector. We have a esteemed panel of guests here as conversation partners for you. And I would like to encourage all of our participants to add your questions in the Q&A box, which is located on the bottom of your screen, because we have plenty of opportunities for you to ask your questions. And today's topic is all about opportunities in the sector, whether working directly or indirectly for extractive sector company. There are ample opportunities for non-skilled, semi-skilled, and skilled workers. But today's session is about the growing opportunities in Guyana in extractives, what is available and what you can transition into, and importantly, a career you can prepare and grow into. Hopefully, we will be able to provide you with resources that is helpful in planning your future and in learning about the sector and the opportunities within the sector. With that, I would like to introduce our first panelist, Honorable Joseph Hamilton, Member of Parliament, Minister of Labour from Ministry of Labour. He will share his perspective on the opportunities in the extractive sector.
Okay, good afternoon, and thank you very much, and thank you to all the panelists that are here and the people who would be paying attention. Two things quickly I want to focus on to start off this conversation. One, I think what is important at this juncture is for us to do a skills gap analysis to get an understanding of what presently exists and what we need to do to ensure that the technical skills we need in the next 5-year, 10-year going forward, we can plan together to ensure that Guyanese are trained to get to the level where we should be to participate in all the extractive industries at the highest level possible. We have in Guyana several technical institutes. My review of training suggests that we are not getting the output because of the fact that there is no collaboration and cooperation. So everyone operates in their little silos and they churn out training. Well, the question is to what end? Some training that the focus is on in some regions, I would want to believe that they are not that needed in the regions. And therefore, we have to reassess all this training that is happening. Whilst we do national training and we pay attention to a national assessment, we have to also pay attention to what are specific to regions. Region 5, 6, 2, 3, their needs would be different. They're agricultural regions. Region 1, 7, 8, and 9 in some regard. They're extractive mining sector regions and forestry. So the needs at the technical level are different. And as we plan and as we develop a national strategy, we must do it as a totality, but we must also have segments that speak to what the regions, the needs in regions are. So the other important issue is we have people who are competent persons who might have operated in different areas, and they have the intellect, the capacity, and we retire them out at 55 in Guyana still. What should be done, must be done, is to ensure that we reskill and retrain persons to get back into the world of work. So those are the issues that I seek to focus on, and the ministry we seek to focus on. We have at the ministry a training arm that is the Board of Industrial Training, and we are trying to retool it based on the needs in regions, and we are trying to expand it so that all regions share in whatever opportunities exist. So from the outset, those are the issues I would want to focus. Another important issue is how over time the society has given, has dealt badly with females. I'm sure the other panelist, NICOLE, she will speak to that matter. But we cannot continue to be happy with just resigning women to caregivers and to being wives and mothers. The society has caused women to stop dreaming, and therefore we must put in place the type of programs and systems to ensure that women can dream again. And then you have another segment of the society that we have treated not so well, people who have a disability. We have to factor them into this conversation because, for information, the last national census indicated, and it was done in 2012, that over 6% of the Guyanese population indicated they had some form of disability they were born with or they got it during their lifetime. And so in a population of 750,000 people, if you have 6% of your people that you're not training to be participants in the developmental trust, then we have a problem. So those are the initial points I would want to make, and I'm open to answer any questions from any person on the panel or any other person listening, so that I can speak to some of the things we are doing here at the Ministry of Labor to arrest some of the things I have pointed to.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister Hamilton. There is one question specific to you, so I would take the opportunity to ask that right away. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. Minister Hamilton, when was the last skill gap analysis or manpower study done in Guyana?
The thing is, there's no answer to that question. And therefore, I'm making the point that it has to be done. It must be done now. Because what we are doing is groping in the dark. We cannot seriously talk about the National Development Trust and how we plan to utilize the extractive industry to benefit ordinary people, and we don't do that. To know what we have in every area, skills, and what we need to do to ensure that yearly, every 5 year, 10 year, we have a plan how we get to what we're short of.
Very good. Thank you for that explanation. Now, I'd like to introduce our next panelist, Ms. Nicole Cole. She is the Commissioner of Women and Gender Equality Commission, and we would love to hear her perspective.
Thank you once more for the opportunity to speak. Here is where I'd like to start on a very serious note, and coming just after the Honorable Labor Minister, security of tenure for women who would, let us say she has gone to school at the tertiary level. She would have studied and got herself a first degree in oil and gas. She now has a job as a technocrat in her field. But then what enables her to have security of tenure? The fact that no one will come to take that job from her based upon a request that she refused, be it sexual or otherwise, that can compromise her integrity. And the reason for me raising security of tenure has to do with two important facts. Since 2005, Guyana has not have a substantive chancellor of the judiciary. I repeat, since 2005, Guyana have not had a substantive chancellor of the judiciary. The two most powerful judicial positions in our country are held by women who are acting. And the Honorable Minister knows that if you are acting in a position and you are not confirmed, there is no security of tenure. You have no benefits to collect. So how can we treat our women who are such esteemed, learned judges, Justices Yonit Cummins Edwards and just the Chief Justice, Roxanne George Wilshire? How can we treat them like that? And yet we are here discussing careers for women in the extractive industry. If we are treating our women in the judicial industry with such disdain and dehumanization, then how can we have security of tenure for women who choose a career in the extractive industry? There have to be a harmonized code of laws that protects women's rights and sees that those who seek to violate those rights are punished condignly by law. It cannot be that women are made pawns in this game that is being played at the judicial level and not in the extractive industry, of course. With oil and gas will come lots of wealth. How are women positioned to access that wealth? Who will ensure that they are part of tradings? Total Tech trains persons every year. Should we introduce a quota system within our local content policy that encourages and persuades and nudges companies to actually put women at the helm, those who are desirous, of course? You cannot train someone who doesn't want to go into the field. I'm talking about women who want to be there, women who are desirous of being trained and they want to venture into this industry. Well, we have a quota system, a law, a parity, a gender parity that says for every training that occurs, if you have 15 men, then you should have at least 5 women, 8 women. This is how we will be able to encourage careers within the very sector that is so male dominated, and then to have security of tenure. How can I, after spending all my years at a university, I'm able to get myself employed, but then I have no security of tenure? There's nothing that helps me to retire with benefits. And this is what is happening to our 2 most powerful women in this country. They are acting, and to not have a chancellor, a substantive chancellor since 2005 in Guyana is really a violation of the human rights of women, and it is to deny the citizens justice that should be there from persons who are not acting. We should no longer have persons acting as our chancellor and acting as our chief justice. Those positions should be confirmed so that there will be security of tenure. The acting must stop. We must learn to respect the rights and respect women's rights as human rights. And those are 2 women who are still acting without any security of tenure. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cole, for sharing your opinion and your perception of what is happening in this regard. I like to open up the floor for some questions. And here is one question about the future of labor markets. What is Guyana's future labor market look like? Honorable Minister, may I ask you to answer first?
The labor market future is one I believe that is filled with opportunities, but we have to marry the opportunities with access to training and learning. And therefore, I can speak to the Ministry of Labor, what we are doing with the training arm, the Board of Industrial Training. And I agree with NICOLE about women should have access. And that is the reason why I can say that, look, we are doing presently heavy duty equipment operator training program in Region 6. We are training 80 persons. 18 of those persons are women. Region 10, we're training 36 persons. 5 of those persons are women. And I continue to encourage persons. But NICOLE and the audience will recognize that we're coming out of a culture that must be changed, where society has designated and designed gender-specific jobs and roles. That is a fundamental issue we have to deal with. And so there has to be a reorientation of thoughts where women can feel comfortable in the technical jobs, and importantly, that is where the good money is being paid. So I'm 100% in support of that. I made mention in my opening comments about what the society we have done to women, where we have resigned them to being caregivers. That has to change. So the labor market, future of the labor market, we have to marry the opportunities. And I have said, and I'm repeating, the way you marry the opportunities is to move forward with a joint collaborative program amongst all technical institutes, all TVET training facility, whether it be private sector or government. And we develop a national plan of action. At the same time, we do a skills gap analysis. So moving forward when we're training, we have an idea as to what we must train, how we must train, who we must train. And I have no difficulty, again, the recommendation NICOLE has on the table to discuss some quota system. I have no difficulty with that, because I believe that all and sundry should be participating in the developmental trust, and to be able to do that, you have to have the technical competencies.
Thank you so much for sharing your view, Honorable Minister. Now, Ms. NICOLE, would you like to comment on what do you think the future of the labor market is going to look like?
I think it has a lot of bright prospects, and I'd like to thank the Honorable Minister for his concurrence and the fact that he listed some programs that women are involved in, commendations, and heavy duty machinery operations. Those jobs do pay well, and it pays better. So for women who are going to school, we do have more women at the university. That's a fact. And the future of that market may look a lot of females in the industry, but then again, for women, they must have robust laws, and not only the laws there, but the enforcement of them, because Guyana have a phenomenon whereby we have all the good laws on the books, but what impacts us is that we may have non-enforcement of those laws. We are not devoid of laws, but it's the enforcement and the policing to ensure that women's right, again, SDG 8, to which we are all trying to reach and attain by 2030, the right decent work and sustainable economic growth for all. So there are bright prospects in this industry, but again, the caution here is whether women will be able to have their rights respected and protected, and the laws enforced in such a manner so that her human right to work, to decent work, is not violated and taken for granted by those who think that she's out of her place. Because remember, even as women push to be a part of various industries, you have a pushback from men who think, from some men, pardon me, please, who think that our place is still in the home, in the kitchen, barefoot and pregnant. And so this is what we've got to continue to strive to ensure that wherever women are working careers in the extractive industries, that the very industry is so humanized that our rights are respected and protected whilst we work. Another phenomenon, women may go into these industries, but do you know what has really impacted women? Read the report. It will tell you the ILO 200-year report, childcare work. So how many industries are prepared to have daycare facilities, night care facilities? Because women still give birth to babies. It is our womb that still give birth to humanity. We still do nurturing. And so not because women will venture into these industries mean that they will stop getting babies. What provisions will be there to ensure that children's rights now are respected and protected as human rights? And so these are some of the critical questions as women who will want to have careers in these very industries. What do they do with their children when they have to work at night? There's so many horror stories of women leaving their children at night unattended, and then the children are abused. So we've got to be very careful here to ensure that we can have human rights at the central focal point when these, as women venture in to these careers that are lucrative and pays more money. But we don't want to have their rights violated, nor the children's rights violated. I thank you.
Thank you for sharing your perspective, Ms. Cole. And in the meantime, our third panelist has arrived, Mr. Floyd Scott. And before we move over to him, I just want to make sure that I acknowledge his participation in today's panel. He is the director of the Council of TVET, the Technical and Vocational Education and Training. And we are honored to have him here to be part of this exciting conversation about labor and opportunities in the extractive sector. And we were just discussing how the future of labor will look like. So, Mr. Scott, if I may put you on the spot, would you like to share your opinion, what the future holds? What is Guyana's future labor market will look like in your opinion?
Thank you very much, Kitty. And it is indeed a pleasure for me to join with this august group of panelists to share especially what we at the Council for Technical Vocational Education Training is involved with. And we do embrace the whole concept of decent work, which certainly aligns to ensuring that whoever is involved within the workspace certainly will benefit from all that is required of, and most of the consideration of social responsibility for the workspace is paramount. As it applies to the Council for Technical Vocational Education, our mandate primarily is to coordinate and regulate TVET in Guyana, and we are considered an awarding body. So whatever is done within and for industry and in nation building is to ensure that we produce or provide the type of product that meets the needs for industry, and more so ensure that the standard is not limited to what existing Guyana, but it can articulate to what is international. Hence, whether it's any gender, we ensure that we provide the quality and the type of training that meets that standard for the industry, so that the person could add value and be of value to the industry and benefit in whatever way is required.
Thank you so much for the opinion and chiming in and diving right in the middle of this discussion. I really appreciate it, Mr. Scott. And the next question we have is for Honorable Minister Hamilton. Minister Hamilton, was any manpower study done to determine priorities for the government's goal 20,000 scholarships program? What percentage of those scholarships would be targeted towards oil and gas training to meet local content objectives?
Just to respond to that, to say that at the level of the gold scholarship, there is a department at the Ministry of Education that they are responsible for the rolling out. They're responsible for the prioritizing, I would dare say, of the program over the next 5 years. At the level of the Ministry of Labor, there has been no interaction with the Ministry of Labor and the Ministry of Education in that regard. What I can say is that as one of the ministers who were involved in the rolling out of the program, I saw several new type technical programs that are being offered that I'm delighted about. So I couldn't, in a deliberate way, and I wouldn't attempt to do that, to speak on behalf of the Minister of Education or on behalf of the professor who is responsible for running the program. What I will reiterate, and Mr. Scott is very much aware of my, my thoughts on this matter, that we need to do a comprehensive skill gap analysis. We need to ensure that we have some national stakeholder forum where all and sundry who have an interest, we reach and we develop a national plan and a national strategy so that we can do some forecasting about what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, and how we finance going forward. So that is at the level of the Ministry of Labor, what we are planning to do, what we want to do. The goal program, we have not, in a deliberate way, I repeat, discussed that the matter about the prioritizing the scholarship, the different type of courses with the Ministry of Education.
Thank you so much, Minister Hamilton. That was a specific question to you, and it's really great to hear your clarification and the information that you provided. Now, the next question is, I think it's more for the entire panel. Here we go. The Oil and Gas Governance Network has produced an introductory directory of jobs in the oil and gas industry. Do you think this step is a step in the right direction to help boost local content participation? Who would like to answer this question?
Let me say this, that the government has a position on the issue of local content, but I dare say this, and I've been saying this around the country to persons. We could scream how much we want, we could write how many letters we can write on this matter. It will not take us to the place we must go. What will take us to the place where we must reach, whereby we control most of, at the highest technical level, the jobs that pay good money in the oil and gas industry, is training and retraining. And so it comes back to the same, question and the same comments I have made earlier. It is not talking around the matter. It is actioning the matter to ensure that in 12 months, this is the deliverable. In 24 months, this is the deliverable. In 48 months, this is the deliverable of technical competencies. So for me, that is the conversation I want to have. Not shedding tears about the present, the fact that expatriates are here, earning good money at higher technical jobs. That conversation will take us nowhere. I want to be in the conversation that speaks to how we get out of this place of unpreparedness. And very shortly, get to a place where we have our people with the competence to compete, so that we can nullify the argument coming from the investors that we don't have the technical skills, so they have to bring them in from overseas. That is the conversation.
Thank you, Minister Hamilton. Ms. Nicole, Mr. Scott, would you like to add your perspective?
Sure. As the minister was speaking, right away, I wanted to ask him if he is committed to if he's committed to ensuring that if the training program at the tertiary level for oil and gas, that there's a quota of women there to train them in those expertise skills, to have them competence, to have the competence, the core skills. Same question I would have had for Mr. Scott and TVET. The women, how are you making it conducive for them to enter? Are the barriers huge, or are the barriers away? Because for women venturing into what is quote unquote, because the oil and gas industry is heavily male dominated. We would have had a plethora of male speakers visit Guyana, predominantly to tell us about what is going on in oil and gas. They've had few women who would have come to talk. And when you hear about a woman, you may have one somewhere or two somewhere, but it is not in that capacity whereby the door is open. So the door still remains closed. So what is being done to ensure that the door remains open for women who are desirous? Nicole Cole wants to add to her career. I've done social work, so now I want to go into oil and gas. What will help to propel me there into this new industry? Because of course, Guyana, new in oil and gas, we wouldn't have the technical expertise. We have to develop it indeed. And so for now, with all the directory that is out, most of those jobs will go towards our diaspora that have the competencies, that have the skill. Trinidad being an industry that would have been in oil and gas way before ours, they will have lots of competencies. Lots of their companies are here, set up, and are accessing and doing things right here. What protects us as Guyanese workers against all what is happening and the exploitation that can occur without there being a union, without being protection for workers' rights? All these are important questions as this new industry burgeons and everybody runs towards it. Because let us be clear, they're running for the money, and not everyone here really love Guyanese. They're just coming for what they can benefit from. And that is as blunt as I put it. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cole.
If I may comment a little, I want us to note, and I think the minister did allude to that, that in no way is there what we call skill discrimination in any aspect where training is concerned. And what we ought to note as well is that within our technical institutions, there are both women, young ladies as well, who are integrally involved in a lot of our technical training. However, as we speak directly to oil and gas, we must take note of the fact that this is a new industry. It brings to it a new culture, and it brings to it an understanding of what industry is all about. Currently, our emphasis is focusing on a culture that I would call a culture of safety, which brings to bear a total shift in our behavior. In saying that, what we have started to do is to ensure that with those existing in the oil and gas sector, to bring together what we call a lead group, so that we can look at the requisite skills that are required and also establish the standards that are required to meet what we will call a national vocational qualification. Since in the context of regional free movement of skills, we do not have currently a regional standard that speaks to oil and gas. So locally, we have to develop that and also develop the capacity where the opportunities exist for both women and men to be involved. But we must understand what the process is all about, because this is a state of the persons within the industry able to establish the skills, the relevant skills that are necessary. And one must note that the oil and gas skill and the jobs are limited in some way. But what is important is that whatever training we do for persons, that is that level of portability that exists in those skill areas. So there's some amount of sustainability that exists, and so it provides employability at all times for those persons, whether male or female. And that's where our general view at TVET, as it speaks to ensuring that persons are provided decent work and are employable.
Thank you so much, Mr. Scott, for your perspective. There's another question for Minister Hamilton. May I ask that?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
So the question is, Mr. Hamilton, the website of the Ministry of Labor does not seem to have a section featuring jobs in the oil and gas industry. Do you think this is important if government wants to see a strong local content participation?
Could you add the starting point of the question I didn't capture?
Yes, of course. So the website of the Ministry of Labor does not seem to have a section featuring jobs in the oil and gas industry. And the question is if it's important.
The thing is, people must firstly understand what is the role of the Ministry of Labor. So the Ministry of Labor is not to seek out jobs for people. The Ministry of Labor, we have two departments. One that deals with issue of training. I spoke to that earlier. That is the Board of Industrial Training that deals with technical and vocational training. And the other department is the CRME that deals with employment, that places people at places to work, and so because of their relationship with the private sector and that kind of thing. But as regards ensuring a person get a job or a type of job, that is not the role of the Ministry of Labor. So I think people are confused at times about what the role of the Ministry of Labor is and is not. I'll give you one example. Every day I get people come by the dozen here who come to me to resolve issues that are the sole responsibility of the National Insurance Scheme. The Ministry of Labor, we have no authority with NIS and its function, and whether an employer paying, remitting the NIS for an employee or not. But a lot of people out there, they believe that we somehow can deal with those matters. So as regards who works where, that is not the role of the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Labor. We have a role, as I said, of training, helping to train, collaborating with people, with different entities, whether it be private sector, public sector, to ensure that we develop the requisite skill across this country, some that are specific to regions. And secondly, we have a placement arm, that is the Central Recruitment and Manpower Agency, that help to place people in jobs that are advertised with us by private sector entities.
Thank you, Honorable Minister Hamilton, for that important clarification. Here is the next question. Companies often incorporate skills and trainings as part of local content agreements or their corporate social responsibility. Is there coordination between the private sector and educational institutes? Who would like to take this?
I can speak for the Board of Industrial Training.
Great.
That has the authority and responsibility to deal with the issue of apprenticeship. And so that's the thing, where we are having conversations with private sector companies to have them have young people come into their organization, into their company, to be trained as apprentices. Secondly, I can say that we have set up a joint technical committee with the University of Guyana, seeking to ensure that every final year student coming out of the university, they do internship, that they can already start to understand practically their job, because one of the issues you have with many qualified people coming out of the university is that they don't get the job because the employer say you don't have the experience. So those are things we are doing. One, having conversation with the private sector, and I've had this conversation and we have it regularly with private sector commission, the Guyana Manufacturing and Service Association, and even the regional chamber to develop more robustly. It has been happening, the apprenticeship program, but I think it should be expanded and it should be developed more robustly to allow for persons going into companies as apprentices to be trained in specific area. And now this new thought we're developing with the University of Guyana, the internship program for final year students coming out of the university.
As it relates to the same question, what must be noted is that for industries and for TVET to be able to impact what happens within the workspace, there's a continual engagement between both the public and private sector to ensure the relevance of the programs that are expected to deliver to the space, and to ensure that those sectors are able to have that currency that is required to exist within the international and local market space. So it's always important for us to have that continual conversation with both public and private sector. And this has been happening, and it's an ongoing phenomenon as it relates to how TVET exists in our local space.
Thank you so much, Mr. Scott. And there's a follow-up question since you mentioned the private sector. Transitional skills are important given the boom and bust of extractive sector life cycles. Has the government, private, and academic sector thought about this?
Let me respond to that. In my engagement, as I engage beneficiaries or students we have that we are training with, and even when I was involved in rolling out the Gold Scholarship Program, I continue to make this point that I believe that the one skilled person will not survive in 5 years, 10 years time. Only the multi-talented and the multi-skilled. And so that is answering specifically that question. I believe that people must be multi-talented, multi-skilled going forward, so that when their one area of their skill set is negatively impacted, they can turn to something else that they were already trained to do. so that they will continue to be employable, and they can feed themselves and their family. So yes, the government has thought about the matter, and as we develop programs, we will develop programs in that regard, whereby we make opportunities to ensure that people are trained in more than one skill going forward.
That is wonderful to hear. Thank you, Honorable Minister Hamilton. Now, either of
May I?
our panelists would like to add.
Sure, I wanted to say that even as the minister speaks about being multi-talented, you also have to be multilingual. Have been able to speak a variety of languages will also suffice. In my brief sojourn at the Confucius Institute, I started to learn Mandarin, and so I can say "Nizamenya," which means "How are you?" And if I say to you "Jtien wo tau tang ye buhao," I'm saying to you today my head hurts and I don't feel well. Being able to be multilingual is critical. To just speak English only, it boxes you in, and Guyana is the only English-speaking country in the whole continent of South America, but yet we are home to 9 indigenous tribes with their own unique languages for the Patamona. And if I say to the minister, Wakapena Warawak, I'm speaking in Patamona to him. I use Warawak because Warawak is male, but if I speak to Miss Kitty and I say Wakapena Miss Sang, I spoke to her in Patamona. Miss Sang means female. So I think for our indigenous languages not even being part of our curriculum has been a human rights violation. We should be multilingual and being able to speak various languages in order for us to survive. The people who are coming into Guyana speak a multidisciplinary of languages, whilst we only grappling with one. And when the minister talked about the role of the ministry, one of the critical roles of the Ministry of Labor is the Occupation Safety and Health Act. This is why they had to step in recently with that building that was that is being constructed on Regent Street, where that young man, that young laborer fell to his death. Occupation, safety, and health is one of the most important mandates of the Ministry of Labor. They have that mandate across the 83,000 square miles of Guyana to ensure that wherever workers are, their occupation, safety, and health rights are respected in conjunction with our local labor laws and the international instruments that we sign on to, which is the ILO. And this is where for even women seeking careers within the extractive industries, who protects their occupation, safety, and health? Who makes it comfortable for them to feel that they can join without having their rights violated? These are serious questions that speaks to their human rights, and women's rights are human rights. I thank you.
Considering what is being said, and I do support the minister a lot in what he said in terms of multi-skilling persons, and as I hear Ms. Cole as well, consideration has been continually involved in ensuring that most of our programs are interpreted in the different languages in Guyana as well. But we also have to take into consideration that we have neighbors around as well. And I think those considerations are also ingrained in most of our programs. Because when we look at what exists currently and the spin-offs, we see that tourism will take a leap in some way, and there will be need for persons to be either multilingual or bilingual, and looking at those different languages. And those also are components within our training programs. More so, we have to recognize that we are not only training persons to gain employment, but also to create employment. So we are also looking at persons, and entrepreneurial studies are integral in most of our programs that are TVET directed. I want us to know that we haven't put those things on the back burner, or they're separated from our program. But consideration have always been there to ensure that people are multilingual or bilingual, and on our language within our regions, persons are exposed to the studies within their own languages as well.
Let me just say quickly that I concur with Nicole when she speaks about the issue of being multilingual or bilingual. Look, already my labor officers here and occupation safety and health officers, they are exposed to Spanish trainings, and they will do Portuguese, and Nicole, they will also do Mandarin, because there's a recognition that they cannot properly supervise labor relations just speaking English alone. Because when the man says, the Spanish speaker says he only speaks poco English, the conversation is finished. Or when the Chinese merchant says, I may not speak English, the conversation is finished. So I recognize that. And I can tell you already, we have started to move in that direction. Importantly, another issue Nicole raised, just for information, when I came here, there were only 9 occupation safety and health officers to supervise this whole country. An impossible task. I can report that we have gotten permission to hire and appoint another 21 persons, taking the component to 30 and to place in every region at least 2 OSH officers. So a lot of the things that we spoke to, there's a recognition that they have to be done, they must be done, but we must always remember that what is happening here from the 5th of August 2020 is reestablishing a labor ministry that did not exist. And therefore, you have to build structure, but at the same time, whilst you're building structure, you still have to give service. And that is what we continue to do. And I am grateful and thankful that many organizations and companies, they have come on board and they are supporting our work. I can report that we have a joint technical committee with the American Chamber. We are discussing having a joint technical committee with the Canadian Chamber. And we have several other joint technical committees. We have a tripartite committee that discusses these matters. So there's a recognition that the skill gaps exist. There's a recognition that we have to collaborate and cooperate going forward. There's a recognition that we have to do the skills gap analysis. There's a recognition that we have to do a national plan forecasting the labor market needs in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years.
Thank you, Minister Hamilton. Now, the next question is specific to TVET. Does the current TVET have occupational skill developed that can be fed into the sector, the extractive sector?
Well, I don't know, Mr. Yes, Mr. Floyd.
As I did indicate to you, is that that is currently a work in progress, because you just don't establish occupational standards like that unless one, as the minister did indicate as well, you do skill needs as well. And what we have to do is solicit what we call a skill sector. We have to have that group of skilled persons within those sectors to be able to look at what a standard should be like. And then we have to look at the competencies that ought to meet those standards. And then we also have to establish the necessary curriculum that we need to deliver to those standards and those competencies. And more so, we have to ensure we have the level of capacity to even do the training and the delivery of training, and even to assess those who would be trained within those standards to see if they meet or can be recognized to the qualification that is expected. So it's a process that must be undergone, and it's not as easy as that to put this together. And that's why I spoke to initially So us having to have this group to develop what we call a national occupational standards, which would lead to a national vocational qualification, which would primarily build that local content capacity in those critical areas to meet the needs of those industries and extractive industries.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. And we are getting close to the end of today's panel. So I would like to invite our esteemed panelists to have any closing remarks that you would like to share with our audience. Honorable Minister, let's start with you. I see that you are on mute for a second, so let's get your mic.
Quickly, let me say that these conversations are useful, and we have to continue having these conversations. We have to continue collaborating and cooperating to ensure that we put together a national plan of action. And I am at the level of the Ministry of Labor. We stand ready and willing to collaborate and cooperate with all stakeholders, whether overseas or Guyanese stakeholders, to put the necessary plans in place so that in a year from now, we can be having a different conversation, a conversation that speaks to how many persons we were able to train and how many of those persons were able to get high-paying jobs within the oil and gas industry and the other extractive industries.
Thank you very much. Ms. Cole, would you like to say something as parting remarks?
If I may, you have a, there was an anonymous attendee that put a question in since 256, and the person came back to say like you are selecting which questions you choose as relevant. So this person was asking, how could we ensure compliance of enforcement of the law and create a space for women to work comfortably in these non-female areas? Ms. Cole spoke about for females. I guess the question here may be directed at labor. How are you going to make these sectors, when you finish training these women and they ensuring that their occupation safety and health concerns, their human rights, spaces within these non-traditional female sectors are actually safe spaces whereby women's rights are protected and respected as human rights? That is what I would like to end my comment on just asking that very important question of the Honorable Minister.
Quickly to answer the question. One, I have stated that we are on the way. First thing you had to do is to build structure. The second thing you had to do is to employ more people to do the work. So you're taking OSH officers from 9 to 30. And then you're taking labor officers from 16 to 26. And then you will place at least 2 of those each in regions, because Guyana is not just region 4. Many people think so. So we have started, NICOLE and everyone else, the process. And I would dare say to you that the 2 legal counsel I have here, one are 2 females. So they guide me daily on these matters. And also, importantly, other than 1 senior technical officer who run a department, all the rest are females here. So I have made all the space available, and I will continue to protect the interests of not just women, all workers. And every day I do that. I intervene personally with some companies from time to time when I think they're giving trying to railroad officers. I, the minister, pick up the phone and tell them, you have 2 choices. Either you follow the law or I will call a press conference. You decide. And that has been working. So thank you very much for having me. And I'm always available to have these discussions.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Scott. And we are really at the end of the time. So one of my objectives is to respect all of our panelists' time to end on time. But I do want to give the opportunity to Mr. Floyd to see any closing remarks.
I just want to say how pleased I am to be able to share what is anticipated of the TVET product, and more so that for one to understand that technical and vocational education should not be stigmatized in any way, and more so it should be understood that this is not primarily geared for only underperformers or under academic performance. It is a tool that allows transformation of country as well as transformation of individuals. And what it does, it provides the level of skills that is required with the right attitude to the work environment. And these attributes are necessary for us, not only to compete regionally, but globally as well. So I want us to understand that this tool is accessible and we should all embrace it, as it provides that leverage of competitive leverage for the country itself and for persons to transform their lives in every way. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scott. I would like to extend my great appreciation for our esteemed panelists today, Honorable Minister Hamilton, Ms. Cole, and Mr. Scott. And I would like to invite all of our participants to take part of the activities following this panel discussion. After a short break, we will be back with a mystery session. It is only a half an hour. Come and join us to learn a little bit more about the industry, and it is going to be very exciting. We would love to have as many of you participate as possible. And the last presentation for today, starting at 5 o'clock, on extractives and open government. With that, I would like to thank you, our panelists, and our great participants for all the questions. And I have to acknowledge that we do still have more questions that we did not have time to answer today. This is the time we had for this panel discussion. I thank you all very much for your understanding and for being part of the discussion. Have a great afternoon and see you at 4 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
facilitating us.